Let me tell you about the day I hit the jackpot. Not the lottery kind, but the kind an orphan girl like me only reads about in beat-up paperbacks. It was the day my boyfriend, Ethan Vanderbilt, took me home to meet his family. The Vanderbilt estate wasn't a house, it was a character in a movie you'd watch with the lights on. The iron gates groaned open, a deep, metallic sigh that seemed to echo back through a century. We crunched up a gravel driveway lined with trees so old their branches looked like gnarled fingers reaching for the sky. The mansion itself sat on a hill, staring down at us with dark, window-pane eyes. It was all gray stone and ivy, imposing and beautiful, and making the tiny apartment I grew up in feel like a shoebox. Ready? Ethan squeezed my hand, his smile as warm and perfect as ever. I nodded, trying to make my own smile look genuine instead of the terrified grimace I felt stretching my lips. My hands were slick with sweat. What if they hated me? A no-name orphan with a history that started and ended with the St. Jude's Home for Children. The moment the massive oak door swung open, the air changed. Outside, it was a crisp autumn day. Inside, the air was still and thick, smelling of old wood, lemon polish, and something else, something faintly metallic, like old coins. And then I saw them. Ethan's father, Mr. Vanderbilt, was the first to greet me. The man was tall, built like the statues you see in museums. When he shook my hand, his completely swallowed mine, his grip firm but not crushing. His eyes were the same deep blue as Ethan's, but where Ethan's were full of easy warmth, his father's were sharp. They didn't just look at you, they felt like they were scanning your history, your intentions, your very soul. But then he smiled, and the intensity vanished. Amelia, it is a genuine pleasure to finally meet the woman who has made my son so happy. His voice was a low rumble that seemed to vibrate in the floorboards. It's an honor to meet you, sir, I managed, my voice a squeak. Ethan's mother was next. She was beautiful in the way a doll in a glass case is beautiful. Perfect blonde hair pinned up without a single stray strand, a silk dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, and a smile that was flawless but didn't quite reach her cool, distant eyes. She took my hand gently, her skin feeling like cool porcelain. "Welcome to our home, dear." They treated me like royalty. They listened to my stories about working at the campus library, they laughed at my dumb jokes, they called me Amy. For a girl who'd spent her life wanting nothing more than a family, it was everything. This was it, the happily ever after. But little things kept snagging at the edge of my perfect picture. The long hallway leading to the dining room was a gallery of Vanderbilt ancestors. Stern-looking men with severe beards and women in stiff corsets. I'm not kidding, I swear, their eyes followed me as I walked past. They weren't just paintings, they felt like silent judges, their painted gazes tracking my every move, deciding if I was worthy of the Vanderbilt name. Then there was the rule. Later that evening, after a dinner I was too nervous to actually taste, Ethan was showing me to the guest room. It was bigger than my entire apartment, with a 4-poster bed and a fireplace. As he kissed me goodnight at the door, he said it so casually, like he was telling me where they kept the extra towels. "You can explore anywhere you like, Amy. Make yourself at home. Just don't go into the basement." He laughed, a light, easy sound. "The pipes down there are ancient. Dad keeps meaning to get them fixed, but you know how it is. It's not safe." "Oh, okay, of course." I forced a smile. It made sense. An old house has old problems. But still, the word absolutely echoed in my head. A warning dressed up as a friendly tip. A little prickle of unease ran up my spine, cold and sharp. I told myself to stop it. This is what you wanted, Amelia. I stood in the middle of that enormous, quiet room and forced myself to breathe. My brain was just looking for problems where there weren't any because it didn't know how to handle this much happiness. I had to ground myself. So I did what I always did when the anxiety started to creep in. I thought about him, my hero. The memory was hazy around the edges, blurred by time and trauma, but the core of it was crystal clear. I'm 6 years old. The smell of smoke is thick in my throat, hot and choking. Screams echo down the halls of St. Jude's. I'm trapped in my little room, the door jammed shut. The heat is pressing in, the wallpaper is starting to peel. And then the door splinters. A figure fills the doorway, a giant silhouette against the terrifying orange glow. I can't see a face, just a massive, dark shape. He scoops me up in one swift motion, his arms strong and sure around my small body. The world is a blur of running and shouting, but I feel safe, utterly and completely safe, tucked against this stranger's chest. He was a firefighter. He had to be. A nameless, faceless hero who saved me and disappeared into the chaos. That memory was my anchor. It was proof that there was good in the world, that even in the worst moments, someone might be there to pull you from the fire. The Vanderbilts were my new anchor. I just had to trust them. I changed into the pajamas Ethan had left for me and climbed into the mountain of pillows and blankets on the bed. Sleep, when it finally came, was heavy and dreamless. Until the whisper. Amy. It was so soft, I thought it was part of a dream. A faint, dry sound, like leaves skittering across pavement. My eyes snapped open. The room was pitch black, except for a thin sliver of moonlight cutting through a gap in the heavy curtains. The old house was groaning around me, the way old houses do, settling its bones for the night. It was just the wind, I told myself, a draft rattling an old window frame. But the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. It was a physical sensation, like a weight pressing down on my chest, the hairs on my arms standing straight up. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I held my breath, listening. Silence, just the frantic thumping in my own ears. I slowly, carefully pushed the heavy comforter back and slid out of bed. The old floorboards were ice cold against my bare feet. I tiptoed to the door, my hand shaking so badly I could barely grip the brass knob. I turned it slowly, wincing at the soft click of the latch. I pulled the door open just a crack, peering out into the long, dark hallway. A single dim sconce at the far end cast long, dancing shadows on the wall, and one of those shadows was moving. It was a man's shadow, stretched and distorted by the low light. It was tall, so incredibly tall, its head brushing the high ceiling. It moved with a slow, deliberate pace, not making a sound. My breath caught in my throat. I watched, frozen, as the figure to whom the shadow belonged stepped briefly into the patch of weak light. It was Mr. Vanderbilt. He was just walking down the hall, probably on his way to his own room. Nothing strange about that. But the sight of his shadow, that impossibly tall, dark shape gliding silently down the corridor, it sent a jolt of ice through my veins. It pulled at a thread deep inside me, a thread I hadn't touched in years. It was a thread connected to smoke and heat and a little girl's terror. That shadow, it looked familiar, frighteningly familiar. The shadow in the hallway haunted me for days. I tried to push it away, to rationalize it. It was just Mr. Vanderbilt. It was just a trick of the light. But the image was burned into the back of my eyes. That towering, silent shape, it felt like a memory trying to claw its way into the present. I threw myself into being the perfect girlfriend, the perfect future daughter-in-law. I helped Mrs. Vanderbilt in the garden. I discussed business with Mr. Vanderbilt. I laughed at all of Ethan's jokes. I was playing a part, and I was playing it for my life. Don't ruin this, Amy. Don't be the weird, paranoid orphan. A few days later, Mrs. Vanderbilt asked me to help her sort through some old books in the library. The room smelled like dust and leather, a scent I usually loved, but here it just felt heavy. I was on a small stepladder, pulling down a heavy stack of books when my foot slipped. The books tumbled to the floor, and one of them, a thick, leather-bound photo album, fell open. "Oh, I'm so sorry." I scrambled down, my cheeks burning. "It's quite all right, dear," she said, her voice smooth as always. I started gathering the scattered photos that had slipped out. Most were black and white pictures of Ethan as a kid, a gap-toothed gran on a tricycle, a tiny tuxedo at some fancy event. But one photo was different. It was in color, faded and dog-eared. It was a picture of a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with stringy brown hair and a cheap-looking dress. She wasn't smiling. Her eyes were wide, staring at the camera with a kind of terror that you don't forget, a kind of terror I recognized. My blood ran cold. "Who's this?" I asked, holding it up. My voice sounded thin. Mrs. Vanderbilt's smile didn't falter, but something in her eyes went hard. She moved faster than I'd ever seen her move before. She didn't take the photo from me, she snatched it. Her manicured fingers closed around it, crinkling the edge. She tucked it back into the album and snapped the book shut with a sharp thud. "Oh, that's no one important. The niece of a former housekeeper, I believe. Always getting into trouble, that one." She gave a little brittle laugh. "Now, shall we move on to the poetry section?" A housekeeper's niece? Really? My gut clenched. The lie was so thin, so quick. I just nodded, my mouth suddenly dry, and went back to the books. But I couldn't shake the image of that little girl's eyes. That night, the noises started. It wasn't a whisper this time. It was a low, dragging sound from the floor beneath my room. A scrape, heavy, like someone was pushing a wooden crate across a concrete floor. It would go on for a minute, then stop. A few minutes of silence, then it would start again. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. It was coming from the direction of the basement. The next morning, I told Ethan about it over breakfast. I tried to make it sound casual, like a funny little quirk of the old house. He just speared a piece of melon with his fork and smiled that perfect, reassuring smile. "Big old house, Ames. The pipes groan, the floors creak. Probably just some giant rats having a party down there." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Don't worry about it. You're safe here." His touch was warm, but it didn't stop the chill that was starting to live permanently in my bones. Rats, right. That afternoon, I bought a small, cheap notebook from a drugstore in town. I started writing things down. The shadow, the eyes of the portraits, the photo, the dragging sound. A part of my brain, the logical part, was screaming at me. "What the hell is going on? This isn't normal. Get out of here." But another voice, the one that sounded a lot like the lonely little girl from St. Jude's, whispered back, "They love you. Ethan loves you. This is your family now. Don't ruin this. Don't you dare ruin this." I listened to the second voice. I always did. A week later, Ethan had to go into the city for a late business dinner. I stayed at the estate, making small talk with his parents in the grand living room. The TV was on, some boring news channel, but nobody was really watching it. The silence in the house was huge, pressing in from all sides. And then I heard it. At first, it was so faint I thought I was imagining it. A thin, reedy sound weaving through the drone of the television. I held my breath, tilting my head. It was a song, a lullaby. It was off-key and unsteady, like it was coming from an old, warped music box. It was coming from the hallway, the one that led to the basement. This wasn't the wind. This wasn't rats. This was a song. Mr. and Mrs. Vanderbilt didn't seem to notice. They just kept staring at the TV, their faces calm and blank in the flickering light. My heart started a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs.
Curiosity is a funny thing. It can be stronger than fear. My feet moved on their own, carrying me out of the living room and into the dim hallway. The singing grew a little louder here. It was a children's song, one I'd never heard before, and it made the hairs on my arms stand up. I tiptoed down the hall. At the very end was a heavy, dark oak door, the basement door. It was ancient, with peeling varnish and a big iron handle. But the lock was wrong. It wasn't an old skeleton key lock. It was a sleek, black keypad with a small, glowing green light. An electronic lock. On a 100-year-old door? My mind screeched to a halt. None of this made sense. I reached out a trembling hand and pressed my ear against the cold, rough wood of the door. The moment my skin made contact, the lullaby stopped. Silence. A thick, heavy silence. And then, a new sound. A scratching. It was a frantic, desperate sound. Fingernails on old wood. Scrabbling, clawing from the other side. It was right there, inches from my ear.
My breath hitched in my throat. Along with the scratching came another sound, a small, choked noise. A child, weeping, a muffled, hopeless sob. I jerked back from the door as if it had burned me. My blood felt like ice water in my veins. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just turned and ran. I didn't stop until I was back in my room with the door slammed shut and the lock turned. I scrambled onto the bed, pulling the thick comforter up to my chin, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. That night, I had the nightmare again, but this time it was different. There was no fire, no smoke, no screaming, just darkness, a deep, cold, absolute darkness. I was 6 years old again, and I was trapped. The tall, dark shape was there, filling the doorway. My hero. I reached for him, just like in my memories. But he wasn't pulling me out. His arms wrapped around me, strong and sure, and he started pulling me in, deeper and deeper into the suffocating, silent dark. I didn't sleep, not a wink. I spent the entire night sitting on my bed, knees pulled to my chest, staring at the locked door of my room. Every creak of the old house was the sound of the basement door opening. Every sigh of the wind was that child's weeping. My body was a live wire, humming with a terror so profound it felt like it was rearranging my insides. I couldn't stop shaking. My hands, my legs, my teeth were chattering like I'd been dunked in ice water. The first sliver of gray dawn finally pushed through the curtains. It didn't bring any relief, just a new kind of exhaustion. A soft knock came at the door. "Amy, you up?" Ethan's voice. Normally, it was the safest sound in the world. Now, it made me flinch so hard I nearly bit my tongue. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was sealed shut. The handle jiggled, then I heard the soft click of a key. He had a key. Of course he did. He opened the door slowly, his face etched with concern. He saw me there, huddled under the covers, and his expression softened into a look of pure, gentle worry. "Hey," he said, walking over and sitting on the edge of the bed. "Bad night?" I just nodded, my eyes wide. I couldn't look away from his face. I was searching for something, a lie, a crack in the perfect facade. I found nothing. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face. His touch was warm. "You were shaking in your sleep again, mumbling about a fire." My blood ran cold. I hadn't said anything. Had I? He sighed, a sad, patient sound. "Ames, I hate seeing you like this. These nightmares, this anxiety, it's all tied to that one memory, isn't it? The night at the orphanage." I nodded again, dumbly. It was my cornerstone. My whole identity was built on that one terrifying, heroic night. The night I was saved. "So let's fix it," he said, his voice so reasonable, so loving. "Let's go back." I blinked. "Go back where?" "To St. Jude's, to your old town. Let's go see the place. Let's stand right where it happened. You need to face it, Amy. You need to see that it's just a memory, a place. It can't hurt you anymore. Once you do that, I swear, these ghosts will finally leave you alone."
My gut screamed at me, a loud, primal no. It screamed about dragging sounds and crying children and electronic locks on ancient doors. It screamed that going back was the worst possible idea. But I looked at his face, at the genuine concern in his eyes. He was trying to help me. He loved me. This was my family. This was my chance to be normal, to shed the skin of the paranoid orphan girl who jumped at shadows. This was my chance to prove I belonged here. Don't ruin this. Don't you dare ruin this. Okay, I whispered, the word feeling like sand in my mouth. Okay, let's go back. The drive to the small, forgotten town took 3 hours. It was a blur of green trees and endless highway. Ethan held my hand the whole time, his thumb rubbing gentle circles over my knuckles. He put on my favorite music. He told me stupid jokes. He was perfect. He was a prince from a fairy tale, rescuing me from the dragon in my own head. By the time we pulled into the sleepy town square, I almost felt calm. I almost believed him. We found the address easily. It wasn't a burned-out husk like I'd always imagined. It wasn't a pile of rubble fenced off from the world. It was a library, a neat 2-story brick building with a freshly painted sign that read St. Jude Community Library.
There were flower boxes in the windows, bright with red geraniums. Kids were running around on the lawn out front. It was so normal, so peaceful. See? Ethan squeezed my hand. It's okay, it's just a building. We walked inside. The air smelled of old paper and floor polish, a comforting, quiet smell. A woman with a cloud of white hair and glasses perched on the end of her nose looked up from the main desk. She gave us a soft, crinkly smile. "Can I help you too?" she asked, her voice like rustling leaves. Ethan smiled his charming smile back at her. We were just in the area. My girlfriend, Amelia, actually she used to live here a long time ago. The woman's eyes widened with interest. She took off her glasses. "Oh my, you lived at the St. Jude Home for Children?" "I did," I said, a small, genuine smile touching my lips for the first time all day. The fear was starting to recede, replaced by a strange sort of pride. I had survived this place. I was a survivor. I was here the night of the fire. I said it with a flourish, my moment of triumph. The librarian just stared at me. Her kind smile slowly faded, replaced by a look of complete and utter confusion. She put her glasses back on, as if that might help her see me more clearly. "Fire, dear?" she said, her head tilted to one side. "That's odd." My smile faltered. The big fire, the one that burned down the West Wing. I was trapped inside until a firefighter pulled me out. The woman frowned, a deep line appearing between her white eyebrows. She leaned forward, her hands flat on the desk. "Honey, I've been the librarian in this town for 52 years. I was working here the day they closed that orphanage down. I can tell you for a fact, St. Jude's never had a fire." The world stopped. It didn't just slow down, it stopped. The hum of the fluorescent lights above me became a deafening roar. The smell of old books turned sour in my throat. My brain just quit. It was like a radio station suddenly turning to static, a loud, meaningless hiss where my thoughts used to be. No, fire. My story, my hero, my entire life was balanced on that one single memory. The librarian kept talking, her voice coming to me as if from underwater. No, there was never any fire. They had to close it down for a much sadder reason, I'm afraid. She sighed, a heavy, tired sound filled with old town gossip and regret. The children, they just kept disappearing. 1 or 2 a year. They'd just vanish from their beds in the middle of the night. No trace. The police never figured it out. It was a terrible, terrible thing. Disappearing. The word slammed into me. It wasn't a thought. It was a physical blow.
The static in my head cleared, replaced by a single pulsing image. The desperate, scratching sound on the other side of the basement door. The muffled, hopeless sobs. I turned my head, a slow, robotic movement, to look at Ethan. I needed him to say something, to laugh and say this old woman was confused, to tell me it was all a mistake, to save me. He was still smiling. It was the same gentle, loving smile he always gave me, the same perfect curve of his lips, the same warmth in his eyes, but it wasn't a smile anymore. It was a painting of a smile, a mask stretched tight over something monstrous. In the flat, sterile light of the library, all the warmth was gone, and I could see the cold, dead thing beneath it. My memory, the real one, the one I had buried for 16 years, ripped its way to the surface. The shadow, tall, broad-shouldered, filling the doorway of my room at St. Jude's. It wasn't a firefighter in a bulky coat. It was a man in a dark suit. And his shadow? It was the exact same shape, the same imposing height, as the shadow I saw cast on the wall in the Vanderbilt mansion hallway just a few weeks ago. The one I told myself was just a trick of the light. It wasn't a trick. It was a copy, a perfect, identical copy of Mr. Vanderbilt. I stood there, frozen between the shelves of fairy tale books and local histories. Ethan's hand was still on my arm, a warm, heavy weight. He was waiting for me, his smile unwavering. But all I could hear was the frantic screaming inside my own skull, a single question, over and over and over. If he wasn't saving me from a fire, then where the hell was he taking me that night?